guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you all how you can crochet your very own chunky scarf using absolutely any weight yarn. You do not need to have a chunky weight yarn in your stash to be able to make this scarf. This scarf is absolutely perfect if you are a beginner. It is so easy and it works up super duper quick. I made this one in about 3 hours. If you're a super speedy crocheter, you can probably make it even quicker. It's a perfect scarf for winter. It's nice and thick, it's chunky, it's squishy, it's oversized. All of the things that I love. You could make it in your team colors and wear it to the footy or wear it to a sporting event. You can make it in absolutely any colors that you like. So if you are interested in making one of these snazzy looking scarves, just keep on watching. So to get started, what we're going to need is 4 different skeins of yarn. The color combos you choose is completely up to you. I've just got 4 skeins of different colored Aran weight yarn. You could use any weight yarn that you like. I have just chosen to use Aran weight yarn because that's pretty much what I have at the moment, so that's what I'm using. We then have our crochet hook. I'm just using a 9mm hook today. I wish I had a 10mm hook because I probably would prefer to use a larger size hook since I am using 4 different strands, but this is the largest size hook I've got, so this is just what I'm going to use today. If you've got a larger hook, please by all means feel free to use that. If you are using a finer weight yarn and you find that a 9mm or a 10mm hook is too big, please feel free to go down a hook size as well. We then just have a darning needle for sewing in our ends later on and some scissors. So I'm just going to move the scissors and the needle to the side because we don't need them right now. And then we're just going to go in and find the ends of our yarn. And we're just going to lay out the ends where we can see them for now. Alright, so once you've found the ends of all your different skeins, what we're going to do to make this a chunky scarf, what we're going to do is hold all 4 strands together but treat them as if they were one strand. So basically you're going to be crocheting with all 4 strands, and that will make for a super chunky, nice and plush, soft scarf. So once you've got all your strands held together like this, we are going to start with a slip knot. And we're then going to start chaining. How many chains you complete is totally up to you. Just keep in mind that the amount of chains you chain will decide on how long your scarf is. So if you like a super chunky, oversized scarf like me, you can follow along with me and just do the same amount of chains that I do. If you wanted to make yours a little bit shorter, by all means, please feel free to do less chains. But moral of the story, the amount of chains that you chain up is going to be the final length of your scarf. So I don't know exactly how many chains I want to chain up at the moment. I'm kind of just going to go with the flow and just test the length as I go. But once I finish chaining, I'll definitely let you guys know how many I ended up with. So if you do want to work along with me, then you can do the same. And now we just start chaining. Remembering we're holding all 4 strands together because that is how we're going to achieve our super chunky look. And now I need to stop talking because I don't know how many chains I've chained. Okay, so I have completed my chaining. I ended up chaining 200 altogether, but as I said, I do like a super oversized chunky scarf, so if you wanted to make yours shorter, by all means, please feel free to chain up less. If you have absolutely no idea how long you want your scarf to be, I recommend as you're chaining up, just try it on as if the chains were the scarf, and that will give you a little bit of an idea on how long you should make your chains. Once you finish chaining, what we're going to do is skip the first 3 stitches. So it is a little bit hard to see because of the multicolored yarn, but we're going to skip the first 3 stitches, so 1, 2, 3, and we're going to be double crocheting into that 4th stitch from our hook. So skipping the first 3 and double crocheting into the 4th stitch from our hook. So yarning over, skipping 1, 2, 3 and going into that 4th chain from our hook and completing a double crochet. Easy as that. We're then going to double crochet in every stitch all the way along, all the way until we reach the end of our chains. I'll do a couple of double crochets with you and then I'll meet you at the end. So yarning over, going into that next chain stitch, completing our double crochet. Again, yarning over, going into that next chain, completing double crochet, and again into that next chain and completing a double crochet. And we're just going to continue doing 1 double crochet in every chain all the way to the end. Where's the end? This scarf's never ending. All the way to the end of our chains, and I'll meet you back here. Alright, so I have finished double crocheting in all my chains all the way till the end. I'm just going to finish off the very last double crochet of the row. Then what we're going to do is chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to turn our work. So flipping it over, and we're now going to be working back along this way. Now what we're going to do is skip that very first stitch, because this chain 3 here is now going to count as our first double crochet of the row. So we're not going to be crocheting into that very first stitch. We're going to go ahead now and double crochet into that 2nd stitch, but we're going to go into the back loop only. So rather than going in through the front here, we're going to go in through that back loop there. So just yarning over and inserting our hook. It is a little bit hard to see on camera because of the multicolored yarn, so I apologize for that. But all we're doing is yarning over and remembering we're skipping that first stitch there, but we're going in through the back loop only of that 2nd stitch. So just like that, and then completing our double crochet. And we're going to continue that all the way along until we get to the end of the row. I'll do a few with you guys and then I'll meet you back at the end. So again, just yarning over and going into that very next stitch through the back loop only and completing a double crochet. Again, yarning over, going through that back loop only, completing a double crochet. Again, yarning over, going through that back loop only and completing a double crochet. Now the reason we're going through the back loop only is because that's going to give us a nice ribbed effect. So it's hard to tell now because we've only done a few stitches, but once we've done quite a few rows you'll be able to see what I mean. But you'll be able to tell as we go on that going through the back loop only gives you a nice little ribbed effect. So I'm going to go ahead now and complete this whole row. So again, we're just going through the back loop only, double crocheting all the way until the end of the row. So go ahead and finish off this row and I will meet you at the end. So just coming up to the end of row 2, just going to finish off the last few double crochet, going into that back loop, last one, and that is row 2 complete. Now again we are chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, and turning our work. So now what we're going to be doing is repeating that exact same row. So we're going to be double crocheting into the back loop of every stitch all the way to the end of the row. The amount of rows we complete will depend on how wide you want your scarf to be. I'm going to say I'm probably going to complete about 5 or 6 rows altogether. Again, I'm just going to play it by ear and see how it goes along the way and like try it on as I go. So that will determine how wide I decide that I want it. But going off the thickness of these 2 rows, I think I probably want it maybe 3 times as wide as this. So I think I'll probably do about 6 rows. But again, you can customize this to suit your preference. So if you prefer to have a narrower scarf, you just complete less rows. If you prefer to have a wider scarf, you complete more rows. If you're following along with me and you want to do the exact same as what I'm doing, keep watching, because once I've finished all my rows, I will tell you guys exactly how many I did. But at this stage, I'm going to say I'm probably going to do about 6 rows. So I'm just going to go ahead now and repeat that exact same row that we just did. So remember that chain 3 counts as our first double crochet, so we're not going to be crocheting into that very first stitch. We are going to go into the back loop of the second stitch, just like so, completing a double crochet. And then we're just going to repeat that in every stitch all the way to the end of the row. Once you get to the end of the row, chain 3, turn your work and complete another row or as many rows as you need to achieve the width that you're after. So I'm going to go ahead now and finish off my rows until I've achieved the width that I am satisfied with, and I will meet you back here once I'm done. Alright, so here I am at the end of my rows. I ended up completing 6 rows just like I thought I would. I'm happy with the width of the scarf now, so I'm going to stop here. If you wanted to continue going and make your scarf thicker, by all means please keep going, but I'm going to stop here after 6 rows. So I can now take my scissors and just cut that off, remembering to leave a long enough tail that you're going to have enough to sew in so it won't come undone. And I'm now just going to finish that off. Tying that end off nice and secure, and I'm now just going to go in and sew in my ends. You can decide how you go about sewing in your ends. Because I've got 4 strands here, I'm going to separate them into 2 different lots. So I'm going to sew in these 2 together at the same time, and then I'll do the same for these 2, just so I'm not sewing in 4 strands at once. It might end up being a little bit bulky, and it might just be that you will end up seeing it because it's creating extra bulk to your stitches where you're sewing them in. So I'm just going to split it into 2 separate lots, but you can choose how you prefer to sew yours in. Once you finish sewing in your ends, you can just go ahead and trim off the excess. Now I'm just going to continue sewing in all my ends, any ends you may have from where you've joined extra yarn throughout your scarf, and of course the ends that we started with at the beginning. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew in all these now, and I will meet you back here once I'm done. So now that all my ends have been sewn in, you could definitely just stop here and leave it as is if you didn't want to add any fringing to the end of your scarf, but I'm a sucker for a fringe, so I'm going to add a fringe to mine. The way that we do this is you're going to take all the colors of the yarn that you used. If you just did one color, that's totally fine. You would just do this in one color. But what I'm going to do is figure out first of all how long I want my fringe to be. So I'm just going to take my yarn, and you could definitely just measure this with the tape measure, but I don't have one handy at the moment, so I'm just going to wing it. If you hold your yarn at the end of your scarf and then roughly figure out how long you want your fringing to be. So I'm going to say I want mine about that long. So what I'm then going to do is pinch it here and fold it in half. Then we're going to cut that length. And we now know that that is the length that we need to cut all our fringing. So I'm going to keep this piece of yarn as a template so I can match up all the other strands of yarn to this length, so I know that they're all going to be the same length. You can do this whichever way you choose, but I just find this is the easiest. So now what I'm going to do is hold the yarn attached to my skein against the yarn that I just cut, and I'm just going to fold it over. You could cut each time if you wanted, but this is quicker in my opinion. Just folding it over again. And we're just going to keep doing that just until we've got a decent amount. And then we're going to cut the end so it's not attached to the skein anymore. And then we're just going to find those loops that we've just created, and we're just going to snip through those. And again on the other end, snipping through those loops. So now we've got our cream colour. We're then just going to take a piece of yarn from this to use it to measure, and we're going to take the next colour of yarn and do the exact same thing that we just did. So just folding over to create loops that we can then go in and cut later. I'm not counting how many I'm doing, I'm just going to do it roughly for now. I'll have to go back and create more, but I'm just going to show you guys how I create the fringing. So once you've got a decent amount, again, cut the end so you're not connected to your skein anymore, and finding those loops and just cutting through those. Don't stress if your strands aren't exactly the same length, because as you can tell, like, mine aren't perfect, but once you've attached it to your scarf, you can go back in and trim it up to make it a bit tidier. So anyway, we're going to repeat that process for all the colours that we used for our scarf. If you used a range of different colours like me, otherwise, if you have only used one colour or two colours, just go in and create a bunch of strands like this that we are then going to use to create our fringe. I'm going to go ahead now and just do this for the other two colours, and I will meet you back here. Alright, so now that I've cut the lengths for each individual colour, what we're going to do is take our scarf now. So just take the end of your scarf. We're then going to take one strand of each colour. If you've only done a single colour, you'll just take 4 strands of the same colour. If you've only done 2 colours, you could take 2 strands of one colour and 2 strands of the other colour. If you've done more than 4 colours, that is totally fine as well. You will just take 1 strand of each colour. Alright, so we've got 1 strand of each colour there. We're then going to loop it over, just like that. Try and make the bottoms as even as possible. Again, like I said, we can go in and trim them up, so don't stress if they're not perfect. So we're going to loop it over just like that. Then what we're going to do is take our crochet hook. We're going to find the edging, the bottom edge of our scarf, and just starting in the corner, we're going to insert our crochet hook through there, and we're going to go through that loop that we've just looped over with our fringing and pull it through the other side. Once you've pulled it through the other side, you're going to just insert your fingers through that loop there and grab the ends and pull them through, and then pull to tighten that up, and we have our first bit of fringing. So the idea is that you continue this step all the way across the edge of your scarf, the end of your scarf, so then you'll be left with some beautiful fringing hanging down. So I'm just going to take 1 strand of each colour again, just like that, folding that in half. Again, don't worry if the ends aren't perfectly lined up, we will go back and trim them later if we need to. Then we're just inserting our hook again, grabbing that, pulling through the other side, putting our fingers through, grabbing that end and pulling it tight. And then we have 2 strands of fringing. So I'm going to go ahead now and finish off this side, and I'll show you what it looks like once I'm done. Alright, so once you've finished with your fringe like I have here, you can just go back and see if there are any gaps that you think you might need to add in an extra one. For instance, I think I'm going to add an extra one in here because as you can see, this gap here is a lot bigger than the other gaps. So I'm just going to add another piece of fringe in here to even it up a little bit. And there we have it. Our fringe on this end of our scarf is now complete. You can go in and just tighten them up so they're nice and secure. And there we have it. I'm now going to go in and repeat this step on the other end, and I will meet you back here when we're done. Alright, so here we are. I've finished the fringe on both ends of my scarf. Now, as I mentioned before, you can now go in and trim up your fringe if you feel like you need to. Not a necessity. I kind of like the imperfect fringe look, I suppose, but as you can see, I've got like a fair chunk here that's a little bit longer, so I'm just going to go in and give that a little snip just to even it up a little bit. But other than that, I think it is looking pretty good. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and now we're done. And that's all there is to it, guys. Is this not the easiest, quickest, chunky scarf you've ever made? I whipped this up in about, I want to say 3 hours, 3.5 hours maybe. So it's quite a quick project. If you're a super fast crocheter, you could probably even do it quicker, but I am not. So I would say probably like an average speed crocheter. So it took me about 3 hours, but you could definitely probably do it quicker. But there you have it, guys. The chunky scarf is complete. Well, guys, that concludes today's tutorial. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you do make this scarf, don't forget to tag me in all your photos on social media. I love seeing all your makes. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications so you will be notified of all my future videos. But until my next video, stay safe, be kind, I'll see you later, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya!